While frequently cited, argument ad hominem is often misunderstood. Find out what the ad hominem fallacy is on this episode of Ancient Egypt and the Bible. In a debate, whenever something unflattering is said, the charge of an ad hominem attack comes out. Today, we will explore the ad hominem argument and fallacy and what it means. Put simply, the Latin argument ad hominem means an argument to the person. The argument takes place when something unflattering is said with a call or inference to ignore or disregard the reasoning of an opponent. For example, Sam makes an eloquent case for better representation on the local school board. Dan responds with, Sam is ugly, smells like a sewer, and dresses like a Goodwill shop exploded. Why would you listen to someone like that? In this example, Dan's introduction of unflattering information is intended to persuade the listener to ignore what Sam says about other things. When used as an informal fallacy, the ad hominem fallacy falls under the general philosophical category of fallacies of relevance. That is, the unflattering information is irrelevant to the argument as a whole and is meant to obfuscate the issue. Now, there are two things about argument ad hominem that often surprises people. First, an insult is not always an ad hominem attack. An ad hominem attack has to be attached to a call or inference not to listen to an opponent. For example, someone might say, quote, really scrutinize the big-eared senator's economic policy. Investing primarily in junk food futures will cost the nation more in long-term health costs, end quote. The insult that the senator is big-eared is certainly an insult and irrelevant. But it has been connected to a call to scrutinize what the senator has proposed. The other thing that can be surprising is that some ad hominem arguments are valid. Every logical fallacy has an exception, and the ad hominem argument is no exception to that. When a claim to expertise in a certain field or moral characteristic is on the line, sometimes ad hominem arguments are valid. For example, Bob says, quote, I have never lied, so you can trust me when I say buy this mutual fund. Quote. John replies, weren't you tried and convicted of perjury? End quote. This is an example where Bob is using his reputation to sell something based upon his honesty. The unflattering information tells you that he is not being honest. A similar example is, Ken says, quote, I have a PhD in science, and I have come to the conclusion that young Earth creationism is true, end quote. Roger responds, quote, didn't you buy that degree from a diploma mill in a trailer home in the Nevada desert, end quote? In this latter case, Ken is making an argument from authority, and he is using the authority of his education to make the case that what he is saying about young Earth creationism is true. Roger brings up the unflattering information that Ken did not earn his degree but only bought a piece of paper, and therefore lacks the requisite education to properly evaluate the arguments. However, this argument ad hominem is only valid because Ken made his claim on the basis of his educational authority. If, on the other hand, Ken had only stated, quote, I have come to the conclusion that young Earth creationism is true, end quote, then Roger's statement would have introduced irrelevant information and would be fallacious. This is not to say that Ken's arguments couldn't be attacked on other grounds, but it is saying that whether or not Ken bought a fake degree is not relevant to the argument. For example, it is possible that Ken bought a fake PhD and then afterwards earned a second real PhD in evolutionary biology. It should be noted, too, that if that latter circumstance had taken place where Ken had earned a legitimate second PhD, this could be a sufficient rebuttal to Roger's valid ad hominem argument, essentially stating that Roger is confusing his second PhD with that first PhD. The other time when an ad hominem argument can be valid is when an opponent has conceded to holding a value, belief, or commitment that is inconsistent with what the person is currently proposing. For example, Joe says, quote, "It is only morally right to support a woman's right to choose under any circumstance," end quote. Peter responds, quote, "Don't you claim to be a lifelong devout supporter of Roman Catholicism," end quote. Now, this is not an unflattering piece of information per se, as much as it is inconvenient. While Joe's religious status would normally be considered a piece of irrelevant information, Roman Catholic doctrine is very pro-life. Thus, Joe already conceding a prior commitment to which he still claims to hold is being shown here to be inconsistent. And if he is shown to be inconsistent in his moral principles on one matter, it deeply compromises other statements of principle he may make regarding his pro-choice stance. Now, there are several variant types of ad hominem fallacy. These include attacks on the bias of a source, challenging a source's motives, accusation of undisclosed favoring or affiliation with an outgroup, and poisoning the well. And while all the above examples may have been a little silly, in today's cancel culture, this fallacy has become all too common. All you need to do is provide a blanket ad hominem label of something that is politically incorrect and emotionally charged that may not even be true, in order to try to silence them on anything else they might say. So, this fallacy is alive and well and gaining strength in Western culture. In conclusion, most ad hominem arguments employ fallacious reasoning. They introduce irrelevant information that is meant to undermine instead of engage an opponent's arguments. And in a debate situation, they can taint the environment in such a way that inhibits reasonable and forward-moving discourse. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you learned something. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time on Ancient Egypt and the Bible.